You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. And today we have quite a heartening program for you because Margot Wallström is here. Margot was recently the Foreign Minister of Sweden. Two very good things, because Sweden is known to be highly progressive, or at least it was before the current government, and also because Margot flatly proclaimed that she was the first feminist foreign minister of a country, gladdening hearts around the world. And indeed, she lived up to that title. Indeed. Well, just a few words about the many things that she did. She was born in 1954. She's a Swedish Social Democratic Party member, and she served as the Deputy Prime Minister of Sweden and the Minister for Foreign Affairs from 2014 to 2019, and the Minister for Nordic Cooperation from 2016 to 2019. She previously had served as the first UN Special Representative on Sexual Violence in Conflict from 2010 to 2012, as Vice President of the European Commission and European Commissioner for Institutional Relations and Communication Strategy from 2004 to 2010, as European Commissioner for the Environment from 1999 to 2004, Minister for Consumer Affairs from 1988 to 1991, and member of the Riksdag, MP for Värmland from 1982 to 1999. She was born in Skellefteå, and she's a high school graduate without academic degrees. How about that? In 1973, she started her career as a banking clerk at the Alpha Savings Bank in Karlstad. She worked there until 1979, and briefly as an accountant then, and she was the CEO of a regional TV network in Värmland. Before taking up her appointment as EU Commissioner, she was Executive Vice President of Worldview Global Media in Colombo, Sri Lanka. She had a long career in politics in the Swedish Parliament, and the Swedish government and the European Commission. At 25, very young, she was elected to Parliament, and she was Environment Commissioner till 2004, and then all these other different portfolios. During her time in office, she pushed the European Commission's proposal for REACH, a regulation requiring manufacturers of industrial chemicals to test and register their products within the European Chemicals Agency before they can be used. And she took on Monsanto, huge multinational chemical company. She was first member of the European Commission to operate a blog. In the comments section of her site quickly became a site of much controversy. She carried names like the Citizens Commissioner and the Propaganda Commissioner, so you can see where the people shook out. In 2006, she presented her plan to transform the EU's Europe by Satellite video broadcast service into an EU news agency. She just went on and on and on, and she made a lot of great trouble. She served as a member of the Amato Group of high-level European politicians unofficially working on rewriting the treaty establishing a constitution for Europe into what was known then as the Treaty of Lisbon. Many, many, many more things, but then I'm picking out some of the special goodies. She was voted in 2006 the most popular woman in Sweden, beating both royals and athletes in a survey carried out by daily newspapers. In the previous year, she got second place, but she finally got first, and she was very modest in her acceptance. She said, "It might be because I'm so far away." But on November 16th, 2007, she became chair of the Council of Women World Leaders, the ministerial initiative, and it was a position previously held by former U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright. And then in 2010 to 2012, she was the United Nations Special Representative on Sexual Conflict, sexual violence in conflict situations, and went to Democratic Republic of Congo to investigate claims, and got into lots more good trouble. And then she became the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and the first EU foreign minister to recognize the state of Palestine, with a view to, quote, facilitate peace agreements by making the parties less unequal. As a result, Israel the same day recalled its ambassador for consultations. Netanyahu declined to receive her. Her diplomatic immunity status meant that she had no security, etc., and so forth. And then in January of 2015, she, after criticizing Russian ambassador to explain comments about there would be consequences if Sweden joined NATO, she then moved on to tweet criticism of Saudi Arabia's flogging of human rights activist blogger Raif Badawi, calling it a cruel attempt to silence modern forms of expression. Yeah, I mean, it's wonderful what she did, just wonderful. And of course, then Saudi Arabia wouldn't receive her and said that they were going to withdraw all of their exports, and oh God, it was quite a flap. But nothing actually ever really happened. All their threats were for nothing. She promised a feminist foreign policy when her Social Democrats formed the coalition government in 2014, and she's criticized the lack of women's rights in Saudi Arabia. And The Spectator, the oldest continuously published magazine in the English language, wrote, as the theocratic kingdom prevents women from traveling, conducting official business, or marrying without the permission of male guardians, and as girls can be forced into child marriages when they're effectively raped by old men, she was telling no more than the truth. So, although Sweden announced it would revoke a weapons export agreement with Saudi Arabia that had been in place since 2005, and Saudi Arabia retaliated by stopping visa issues for Swedes who were business people, and they boycotted Wallström's speech, nothing really boiled over. And she has, noticing that she was in Wikipedia, she called for more articles on women. She just goes on and on. So we have her today as a guest, and a guest for the second time. She was a guest even when she was a sitting member of the cabinet and the foreign minister, and even then she told the truth. But the government has unfortunately changed since then, and it's neither as progressive as she and we would have liked, nor as feminist. Deep sigh. But she's become a good friend, and it's a delight to welcome her back. So, when we return after this next brief message, we will do so with Margot Wallström. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Margot. Welcome back. Margot Wallström, former minister foreign minister of Sweden, and former and current, I would say, feminist minister. Welcome back to Women's Media Center Live. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so glad you're back.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Well, we can, in a sense, be much more honest because you're not a sitting minister at this moment, although you never know in the future. I would like you to begin by talking about the real reaction of the world to Donald J. Trump and this new hideous, terrifying regime that we have in this country, which I never thought we would have, and Europe in particular, Europe's attitude toward it, because you were in government for what, 8 years, something like that, in Sweden, and Sweden is one of the most progressive countries in Europe, if not the most progressive. So I'll just let you loose.
Thank you very much, Robin, for inviting me. And it's a pleasure and an honor, as usual, to be able to express also some of the reactions that I think we had in Europe and also in my own country, Sweden. I always try to speak from my heart and honestly about the things that I care for a lot. And this is exactly also what worries me the most at the moment. And I think the reaction to Trump being re-elected this time was first massive disbelief, which turned into kind of horror and shock because of the tariffs, but also a number of other actions that have been taken under his steer. And I think that, and I believe that it is really about democracy and the future of democracy.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, many of these reforms or decisions, they follow the kind of playbook for any ruler who wants to turn a democracy into an autocracy. And that includes sort of the polarization, dividing the country into us and them. It really involves attacking or weakening civil society and the different organizations.
Well, as you know, Hitler was elected.
Absolutely, and unfortunately, we've seen with the sort of the backlash for democracy all over the world that it happens fairly often that these autocrats are also re-elected. And I believe that also the deep social and economic inequalities that we see around the world are incompatible with democracy. If there is always a big group that feel that they have nothing to gain from a democratic regime, they will start to look for other solutions and other leaders. I think what worries, so democracy is definitely one of the issues that really worry Europe, but I would say also what happens with Ukraine will determine so much of the security situation and foreign policy also into the future. Because if there is one thing that has actually united the European countries, it is the support for Ukraine. And when the American president now claims that he can solve that war and conflict as many other conflicts around the world, or wars in a heartbeat, that has already proven to be wrong. And I think it demonstrates that he understands very little about diplomacy and finding political solutions. And that is also very worrying for us, because this is something that engages every citizen as well. I think governments all over Europe, they enjoy broad support for public support for the different actions that has been taken to punish and make Russia accountable for this war and for the war crimes that they have committed. So that is key. But the economy will also suffer, and normal consumers and citizens will feel the effect of the tariffs. And we don't like tariffs. We believe in free trade and has worked for that also within the European Union for a very long time. So that's where we are. So the reactions have been massive. And I think also that the crowd around him, it's hard to believe or understand the almost sect-like devotion to him and praise
Cult,
that
yeah.
they give him, and cult-like, and that is rather revolting, I have to say.
I feel like I should wear a large, one of those sandwich board covering my entire front saying things. I'm an American and I'm so, so sorry. I mean, but we
we can
tried.
do better.
We
We can do
tried.
better. Yeah. But in this world where we also have access to so much of information and knowledge, we have scientists and experts that we can
Yeah, it's
trust, and then here comes those people that don't seem to think for themselves, but actually just obey blindly
yeah.
a so-called leader, and this is also a very serious development, I would say. But I think, unfortunately, what is happening now is that the US will lose so many of its allies and partners and friends around the world.
Yeah.
So, and you will need them. There
Yeah.
will come a point
Of
when
course,
they
of
are
course.
needed.
We need them already. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is absurd.
Uh,
It's you were the first feminist foreign minister of any country. Later on, Germany began to sort of flirt with the idea, and I think Canada and France. And I want to ask you what's become of them, if anything.
oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
I must say that I think that the experience as working from being a special representative on conflict-related sexual violence inspired me and taught me that these survivors, these women, because the majority are
Of
women,
course.
victims of sexual violence in war and conflict, they don't want to be seen only as victims. They are agents for change in
They're
their country.
survivors. That's right.
Yeah, they're survivors, and they want to let their voices be heard, and they want to be part of changing their lives and the future of their countries as well. And also that it was very clear to me that without women at the negotiating tables, without women being also mediators or involved in any peace process, there cannot be sustainable peace. And very often, even if there is an agreement, there is no peace for women because the violence will continue, but in different shapes and forms. So when we took office as a new government in 2014 in Sweden, and I became the foreign minister, I declared that we would pursue a feminist foreign policy. And that is, of course, among all the other things that we stand for, a generous development policy, free trade, multilateralism, support to international cooperation everywhere. But this would be part of how we pursued our policies.
But
And
it's a huge part because it's half the world. It's half, I mean.
So it's also about democracy in the end. It's
Yeah.
also about the half of the world's population. And as of now, actually, I think there is a network of 14 countries in the world that declare that they pursue a feminist foreign policy. But unfortunately, when we lost the election, we in 2019, the new government, which is very much influenced by a right-wing xenophobic party, or they are dependent on them, they declared that they would no longer call it a feminist foreign policy, but they also insisted on keeping some of the the elements.
Interesting. What did they keep? What did they keep?
No, they insist on saying that they are, working for women's rights and sort of gender equality. I think it has to be proven yet. I haven't seen much of it, unfortunately, but I hope that some of the things that we did will remain, because this is also a kind of the lens through which you will look at the world, and you will see that we also have to involve women in everything, and especially in peace processes and everything that has to do with war and conflict also.
You structured the feminist foreign policy around 3 R's: rights,
I did.
representation, and resources. And then you added a fourth, which I think is very funny, which is reality check.
Yeah, that should maybe be the first one. You look at reality. So what does it look like? Are women discriminated against? Do they experience this or that problem more than men and boys do? And
what's fascinating about this is this goes into every aspect of it, indoors and outdoors, at home and abroad.
Yeah.
What about child marriages?
Yes,
what about the rights to open a bank account or start a business, or economic rights? Are women around the peace table? Do they have a seat when most important decisions are being made? What about political representation? And what about resources? What do statistics and facts tell us? Does the country have a gender budget? Do we know how resources are distributed? Do they meet the needs of women and girls? And it goes on and on and on. It is genuinely remarkable. I mean,
I was lucky to come up with those R's. First of all, I decided that this would not be part of the identity agenda. I really felt that if we started with that, we would just it would be like hitting a brick wall immediately. Instead, I wanted it to be inclusive in the way that we identify the real political problems that exist and that we have to deal with. And since I like alliteration and often try to communicate in a way that is simple to understand, I came up with those 3 R's because I think it's really about those 3 R's. The rights, both legal and human rights. Do women enjoy the same rights? And that goes with the reality check, because in many of our countries, our ambassadors, our diplomatic staff can just look around and see, so what about child marriage in this country? What about women's possibility to inherit land, or what about them being
to divorce,
in
to
the
drive,
government? And then being in parliament, being represented, having a voice in parliament, in government, in big business boards, and what have you. So I think this has made sense and makes it very concrete. And that's what I wanted. I want this to be a real mean and lead to a real change for women and girls around the world.
That's what got you into trouble. I mean, God love you. It is because you made it very clear. You said, to me, it's very practical. This is how you change the world, by being very, very practical. I refuse to get involved in all those theoretical discussions. This is a quote from you about definitions. I think this must be a practical tool. And it is absolutely that. And that's what scared the hell out of the adversaries, I think.
Probably, or hopefully. But I also think that for now, I mean, just take one example. Right now, we know that the worst cases of discrimination against women and girls, of course, happen in countries like Afghanistan and Iran. And this is where I believe that a network of this kind could, for example, and the network of countries that say that they pursue a feminist foreign policy, they could come together and say, let's all of us do whatever we can to allow women journalists from Afghanistan, to give them safe haven in our countries, and allow them to continue to write and report about what goes on in Afghanistan.
Right.
So make it a practical proof of what it means to both work together, but also to do something very down to earth, and that is necessary at the moment.
Well, when you, of course it is. I mean, but when you took this philosophy, these theories, this supposed pie in the sky, and you made it practical, you made it real, you brought it down to earth, with Saudi Arabia, even Sweden got somewhat hysterical, and I do use the word advisedly. They really couldn't deal with it, and of course, nothing really happened. It isn't that the trade stopped with
No,
Saudi Arabia. It
no.
isn't that they were let loose on the world riding horses and whipping people. They would have liked to, but they didn't. And I mean. It's extraordinary, but the fear that they released by protesting that you had critiqued them for lashing protesters in public, um, which was a perfectly normal thing for a foreign minister any foreign minister, I should like to think, would do, and certainly a feminist foreign minister. What the hell is wrong with them? But
Well,
nothing happened. Nothing really
no,
happened.
nothing happened afterwards, but this is a power demonstration, of course, and they wanted to mark their position versus me, and
Yeah.
and it was a test of that I was right, I think, in doing that. But nobody dared to criticize the side Saudi. So that was where we were at the time. But
Well,
uh,
what effect did that have, or does that have on future
no, I mean,
feminist leaning foreign policies?
no, I think that this is part of what you have to do. You have to be able to speak up and speak
Indeed.
truths to power and those in power as well. Also as a foreign minister, and then there will be those reactions, but then you have to repair and the relations as well to continue a dialogue that can be very critical but respectful. So I think that we managed to do that, and we had to use sort of our diplomatic skill to reestablish a contact, but we had made our point, and that was I think important to do at that time. But it was interesting to see also who were those that before was asking me to absolutely be much stricter and make statements that were even stronger. But when sort of the Saudis responded by making all kinds of playing all kinds of diplomatic games against us, then they were nowhere. The first ones, those they were nowhere except for one or two people who actually stood up and defended sort of my position. But we were able to repair that and sort of continue with our diplomatic contacts. But yeah, it was kind of a crisis.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
happens as well.
But what is fascinating is that when you began this feminist policy, which you were perfectly willing to sacrifice the word, just let's do the reality. But in any event, the whole world called it feminist foreign policy from Sweden. Oh my God, my God, my God. And so when you established this, um, you were even surprised at the response from the diplomatic corps all around the
Yeah.
world, including I think the ambassador to the UN, who said, every time that there's a crisis, I mean, I raise my hand and I say, well, are there women at the table? And
Yeah.
I'm alone in this. Nobody backs me up. Nobody. I mean, so there were lots of these people who came out of hiding to say, oh, this is a good idea. Let's do it.
Yeah.
I mean, and what about those people?
Yeah, no, and I wanted them involved. I wanted to make sure that we could mobilize all their expertise and their experiences, and also that they would look at the situation in each and every country and say, so what does this mean for us? What is it that we can do if we follow those sort of parameters of the 3 Rs? What is our own analysis? What can we do? And we got so many good ideas and so much of engagement. And I think that they have definitely not abandoned this. I mean, this will stay on, because what you have to do is to make sure that there is a structure with both training for all our diplomatic staff that felt that they needed that, but a better understanding of what this means. And you have to make sure that you have kind of we produced a handbook, we did reports to the parliament, we have done all of that as a follow-up. So there has to be a structure within which they can continue to work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they do. And they started, I know ambassadors that came to me and said, well, we started to look at who do we invite when we make different events at our embassy and so on. Do we invite women as well, to the extent that is sort of reasonable, and do we really listen to their voices as well? And a lot of these things that led to a different working method and a different understanding. And I think that they have all enjoyed that. And I think there are many of them who simply, they learned something from this and they will carry it with them. And it's not that they will abandon the whole idea of involving women. It will come more naturally to them, even if the government says that they cannot.
You're right. You're right. They will try to sneak it through, even
kind of. No, but I mean, it ought to be the natural way of working.
Of course, it ought to, but it ought to be. It's not the natural way in this country anymore. Amazingly, stunningly, staggeringly enough, it's not the norm. It's not, and we're working nonstop to try and change that and bring back or bring forward or I mean, this has been an absolute trauma, a traumatic shift in this country.
I can follow that, and I can see also that there are other things that are really worrying, and that is the work for and against climate change and the effects of climate change, but also the protection of the environment. And I mean, that is so short-sighted to say that they will just stop these kind of programs that protect not least children.
It's terrifying. Because they say that we have, 5 years to turn it around before it gets out of hand.
I think the world has already seen the effects that the experts on climate change and scientists,
there are fires all over, there are landslides, there are floods, there are hurricanes, there are tsunamis. You'd think that they would get the point, that they don't need more proof. But it is amazing. It is amazing. There is
of course, energy policy and all of that will remain at the center of politics, and migration as well is, but this is, and that's an issue that is very controversial also.
But migration is, in Europe, yes, of course it is. I mean, starting in Hungary and moving on from there. But the whole point of it, to me, is that the North came to their countries and gutted them of diamonds, of ore, of all the natural resources, and now they're coming to the North, and the heartbreaking capacity for suffering that is felt by the migrant communities is everywhere. It's just everywhere, and of course, it is mostly women and children. The men travel separately. They get in somehow. They get employed somehow, or they don't. But the women and children, no, they can't.
That's why they have to be at any negotiating table as well, and mediation table, because just look at Ukraine. If we come back to the war in Ukraine, that women, of course, have played. They also fight. They also take on a uniform and weaponize themselves. But the majority, they have a different role in this war. They have had to leave. They've had to flee, or they have to stay and take care of the elderly and children and so on. And if their experiences of this, they all love their country as much as men do, who have to fight in the battlefield. But if their voices, their experiences, and what they have been through during this war is never talked about, is never mentioned in any peace process, then
No,
unfortunately also this phenomenon of the phenomenon on sexual violence in war and conflict will never be mentioned, and it will also remain unpunished.
that's
So
right.
impunity for these type of crimes will continue to be the rule, and that is very, very serious, because that's also how violence against women stays. There is no peace for women because the violence will continue also after peace hopefully comes one day. So that's why this is a very, very important principle of in involving women, and that's what we learned during our period. Also, we did 2 years as a non-permanent member in the Security Council, and we did that. I forced the ambassador to every time raise his hand and say, "But where are the women?
Ah,
Why are there no women around the table?" And
bravo.
that's how it works, and that's the question I put also when I see all these pictures of tables where
Well, they're all men.
where the
What is
peacemakers
what
are.
is wrong with this picture? You know.
Yes, exactly. Look once again. So something missing. Yeah, women.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and do you know that I'm sure you do, the 12-year study that was done by Valerie Hudson. I think I mentioned it to you at some maybe dinner or something. Um, it's called Sex and World Peace. And
Mm,
she led a team of scholars for 12 years
mm,
following nations and violence. And what she came up with is staggering. It has proven once and for all that the arbiter of whether a country is aggressive and violent in its kind of responses, whether it's actually violent or not,
mm.
but it is that's part of its ethos. Is not all the things we thought. It's not whether it's a democracy. It's not whether it's well, it is whether it's a democracy, but it isn't specific to
Mm.
democracy. It's not geopolitical. It's not whether it has natural resources. It's not all of those things that we thought were operative. It is dependent on how a country treats
This
its
is
women.
mm. Yeah,
And
exactly.
if it is violent toward its women, it is violent toward the world. And
Yeah.
if it is not, it is not. And I just think that's amazing. I think it's extraordinary, and that she and her team of scholars, came up with the sex and world peace.
Yeah.
And of course it's been very slow to catch on. And in the current administration in the United States, of course, it has gone absolutely nowhere,
Mm.
because it's a very aggressive and um, killer
And
mentality in Washington. Uh, but I just think it's an amazement, an
it,
absolute. Everybody should buy the book. It's
yeah,
extraordinary.
yeah. Yes. And this is also my experience, and that goes, if you look at the role of women, you will also include the children,
Yeah,
because
absolutely,
and
because
what is
they
good,
just want to see tomorrow.
yeah,
That's
and what
all.
is good for children and women is good for everybody.
That's
That's just,
correct. Absolutely right. Oh, Margot, what do you think will happen? I mean, I am such, we all here in the States we ricochet between hope and deep depression. I've been on that ricochet for, well,
well,
since election, and I don't, it's no good hoping that he changes or that,
no.
I mean, he won't. And besides, he's now got people in place to continue his work.
Yeah.
Um, and if we have only 5 years or so for the planet, then it's over.
Mm.
Then it's very difficult to see a way through this, although we keep trying because that's what one does. But what with your wise head, what do you see?
Well, as was the case with Pandora's box, the thing that remained when she opened the box against all advice, and everything else flew out, the thing that remained was hope. And the hope must be attached to, I think, action also. Organize yourselves, take political action, hold the president accountable towards his promises in the election. Make sure that your voices are heard, and seek hope from working with other people. Do something unselfish. Mix your selfish with doing something unselfish.
Yeah.
And I also hope that they will be able to mobilize some civil courage, the Republicans that can see through the actions of this.
That's beginning to happen, just a
I
little,
think so. Yeah.
just a
So
tiny
maybe,
sliver. It's beginning with the
yeah.
Republicans.
So maybe
because-
that's where, and young people, and look at
and yes,
young people and children. They want to live. They want to survive. They want to have a future, and it is a future where war is not constant.
no,
They want
and when you look at movements, you see a greater unification than you ever have. I mean, there's no more time to jockey for, that people always jockey a little for funding, but there's no more time really to do that because it is so imperative that it's an all hands on deck.
But you must know this poem, since you're a poet yourself, Robin, that hope is that thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings a song without the words and never stops at all.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. You're so right. Oh, Margot, you give me hope. You do. You really do, because you're so sane. SANE. You are so sane. It is really an amazing achievement these days, and I don't know how you manage it, but you manage to get and stay sane. And so talking to you has a wonderful calming effect and an inspiring effect at the same time.
Same to you, Robin. Thank you. You are fighting also your fight, and you are also an inspiration. So thank you.
Oh, my dear. Well, take care of your dear self. I will see you soon. Say a word about what you're doing today, by the way.
Oh, today I'm taking a day off, and I'm up in the Hudson Valley, and
no, I mean, that's very important. That's very good.
You mean what I'm doing
these days? Yes.
For a living? Yeah. No, these days actually I have spent a number of weeks at Columbia. And met with students. So I've been
lucky them.
Guest lecturer at a course at Columbia.
Oh, well, lucky them.
It has been fantastic.
It must blow them away to hear you talk. It must, it sets whole different new standards. But you are a dear, dear, dear friend and a dream of a feminist minister, and may you be back in office and lead us all someday. I hope. And that's the thing with feathers. It's definitely, that's my hope.
Thank you very much, Robin. All the best to you as well.
All right, my dear. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
We have to take a short break here, but I will return directly with some fighting words. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacity. Now that's a fighting word.
There are a few more words about age and ageism. You know, when we look at politics, we see things through a different mirror, darkly, and we see a lot of refusal to give up power. Chuck Grassley, I think he's 92, and shows it. Dianne Feinstein, who went unwillingly, kicking and screaming, and Strom Thurmond, who was over 100, and so many others. They call it the nursing home on the floor of the Senate. And I don't know that there can be or should be age limitations, but there should be something. Maybe it should be cognitive tests. Maybe it shouldn't. Maybe I don't know what it should be, but I think we have got to examine it. Because we've got to develop a balance between caution and about elderly people who are not altogether with it, on the one hand, and respect, real respect for real wisdom on the other. But we're not all like the indigenous peoples of this earth and who revere their wise ones and treat them with great respect. Of course, it depends on who, because the Inuit and some of the Tlingit tribal peoples in the far north put their elderly on ice floes and send them off to sea. So you can't assume that the indigenous communities always indulge the old. But a balance between caution and respect would be nice. So, there is a new book out. I'm sure you've heard about it. It is called Original Sin. It has a long subtitle, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again, by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson. Tapper is, of course, an anchor for the CNN News, and his co-author, Thompson, has been a New York Times reporter and is a reporter for Axios. And they're interesting, but a bit of a problem. I didn't know Thompson's work. I knew Tapper's, and I liked him because he was always fair to women, and it seemed that his heart was coming from the right place, sort of, if an anchor's could be. And but the book really did open my eyes. It's I think it's unfair. It it begins, well, it's forever saying over and over again that the Politburo, as he calls those close to Biden, the Politburo, right around him, who counseled him and defended him and closed ranks around him, defended him to the end and said he should never give up. Well, the Politburo repeated itself a lot, with tired old tropes about, well, no, he was sick and he had a cold and he has a sore throat and he didn't sleep on the plane and he's tired. But they would not admit that he was at all impaired, even when it began to become very obvious. So I have to say that the tired old tropes that Tapper and Thompson accused the Politburo of having, the Politburo had, but also Tapper and Thompson have as well. The book is filled with tired old tropes. It repeats itself a lot. It's a lot of people talking to each other, shrugging and looking concerned. Again and again and again. It's little. Contains little that has not already been publicized, like the famous George Clooney. He didn't recognize George Clooney. And a couple of others like that. The heart and soul of the Politburo were two men, Mike Donnellan and Steve Ricchetti. Now, keep in mind that Biden now is 82 and Trump is 79. So you can just think backwards 2 years. There's not much difference there. So, yes, Biden, it was sometimes alarming and nervous-making and anxiety-provoking, and yes, it was also confusing. But given the alternatives, it was almost reassuring. Because Biden's gaffes were gaffes. They were clearly errors, mistakes. He knew who the president of Egypt was. He knew it was Sisi, and that Sisi was not the president of Mexico. But they were not based in ignorance, and Trump's were. That's why it was almost reassuring. It is also possible for somebody to accomplish great things, as Biden did, at the level almost of FDR, and at the same time turn out to be less than a perfect person, or even a likable person, or even let's say an ideal president. Neither was FDR. You need, however, to be able to hold two dissenting thoughts in your head at the same time in order to understand that. So when Biden mixed up Mitterrand and Macron, because they both began with the letter M, those were clearly flubs. He knew the difference. Although they both had been the head of France. They both had been president of France. But closer to home, when Trump mixed up Nancy Pelosi's name with Nikki Haley, and a number of other women who were perceived as powerful women, I'm afraid he meant it. He also said that Obama was still in office. He mixed up his tenure. And just recently he referred to Pakistan and India as being centuries-old enemies, when in fact they only became adversaries after partition in the late 1940s. This man has been spilling non-facts, anti-facts, wrong facts from his garbage mouth for years now, in fact. I mean, he was the one who told us we should ingest bleach to cure COVID. He was the one who... You can't begin with his errors. And he defends them. That's the difference. He claims that his mispronunciations, that his misstatements, that his flat-out lies, like how many people are at the border or anything, he proclaims that was intentional. Or it was satire. Or it was a joke, so it's your fault for not getting the joke. It's the audacity. You'd never catch Biden doing that. Biden always apologized. He was a polite kid. So, it seems sad to me. Well, many things seem sad, but this seems particularly sad because the faker, the liar, used his, quote, youth, unquote, his intrepid staying alive even after he was shot, his immortality, his manliness, his all those odious aspects of himself, claiming that it was a joke, or it was a satire, or you didn't get it, or it was the audacity. Christiane Amanpour, a great journalist, once said she just wanted to be a journalist without fear or favor. And this book is not either, I'm afraid. It's very cruel in parts, but even leaving those parts alone, it's unnecessarily, gratuitously simplistic. It could have been a great book. It should have been a great book. If Woodward had done it, it would have been a great book. But unfortunately, it's not. So either wait for the paperback or don't buy it at all. Because you'll get the George Clooney line and you'll get the mistakes that Biden made and you'll get the mispronunciations and things like that. So what? You wait for the big moment, the big revealing moment, and it never comes. And you can begin to see why he thought he could stay. He was wrong. And the worst part was that he wasn't seeing his real polls because Ricchetti and Donnellan kept them from him, and the pollsters were not permitted near him, and so he was basing his analysis on the wrong materials until the very end. And she, well, I don't know that she ever stood a chance, but she sure tried. She comes across well. As for Biden, I hope that he will go down as a great and tragic president. As for Trump, I hope he will go down and down and down and down to hell without fear or favor. Damn right. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on social media at The Robin Morgan. You can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net, and you can find my new novel, Parallax, and my just-out new book of poems, Harvesting Darkness, wherever books are sold. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Executive producer, as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer for this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us next time on Women's Media Center Live.